ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्णसमाज्ञया यो धर्मस्थापनरतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. On the last Thursday, we started studying the second chapter of Swami Vivekananda's Karma Yoga. The name of the chapter being Each is Great in His Own Place. And we read, if you count by paras, we read 9 paras. We had just touched the 10th para. And the subject matter of the entire chapter, as we understand by the name and the context, is that we need not spend our energy in changing our work. Our energy should be applied to changing the attitude behind the work. That is the main theme. I mean, now we feel sometimes that my work is good. There are two types of men or two types of ideas come in the mind. My work is the best work. You must do my work. One idea. My work is useless. What you do is better. Let me copy that. No, both are wrong. In our country, in India, generally the division was made between Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudras. But we must extend our learning to the entire universe, and it must be applicable to the entire world. And so Swamiji is describing that according to the situation in which you are placed in society, in which country. If you are in England, the duties and what is considered as righteous is different than those in India. Every country has its own code of conduct. So, one thing is where you are in society, that is one point. Instead of Varna and Ashram, we must think in this way as Swamiji has taught us. No use telling you are a Brahmin or a Kshatriya. In which country, in what circumstances, what occupation you are placed in. That is one thing. Secondly, in your life, whether you are still a student or a householder or living in forest seclusion or you are a sannyasi, these are the two things to be considered. That according to your constitution, that is another thing. What is your constitution of the mind? And if you do the work according to your constitution, it will be easier to reach God. Only changing the attitude behind the work. So according to your constitution, according to the circumstances in which you are placed, according to the biological growth of your body and mind, this determines what work you should do. In our scriptures, there is a word adhikara. Now, one must understand this adhikara also. A Western concept came, and today it is pervading India, and that makes a dichotomy between duty and rights. In ancient India, even today, those who understand, these two things were not different at all. It is my right to do this duty. It is my right to do this duty. That was the idea. Not fighting between the rights and duties. So what is this right to duty? That which I can easily do and that which will lead me to God is called adhikar. I can easily do many bad things also. They will not lead me to God. And certain things I cannot do. So how they can lead me to God? If I forcibly try to do them. So this man should consider. And generally, a man is unable to consider this. It is generally the perfected gurus who can show this is your adhikar, you do this thing. So that is the main point. And second point is that a man should not be judged by what he does. A man should be judged by how he does it. A sweeper in the street, if he is doing it with a proper attitude, he is greater in the scale of spirituality than a king or a president or a priest, if he does not do his duty in that proper attitude. So this is the context of this chapter. The whole context of this chapter is this: find out what is righteous for you, find out what you should do so that you spiritually grow, and so do it with the proper attitude. For that, Swamiji has, up till now, we have seen now then another division, main division. In our life, we have what Swamiji has described, Rajo Gun. That is how Swamiji started this chapter. Sattva, Raja, Tama are in every being, but someone predominates. And in a normal, ordinary human being, Rajogun predominates, or it should predominate. That means if Tamogun predominates, we do not do any work, and that is not covetable at all. So I said Rajogun predominates and it should predominate. Now, this makes us work. Now, if we have Rajogun predominating and we say we will not work, that will be a sin. Sin in the sense, we will not progress spiritually. So, then very few are there who have transcended their Rajogun and they predominate in Sattva-gun. They do not require to do work. They can think of God always. So, this Swamiji is explaining that real non-resistance, real sannyas would come only after we have gained that Sattva-gun through our Rajogun with proper attitude. That is the point Swamiji is telling. So now we read this paragraph. Inactivity should be avoided by all means. By all means, inactivity should be avoided. Because inactivity leads to Tamogun. And we will go down in our life more and more if we adopt that. Inactivity to be achieved is a different thing at all. When I am the doer vanishes, then real inactivity is achieved. But so long as I am the doer and I adopt inactivity, I will go down and down and down. That is the whole point. So, inactivity should be avoided by all means. Activity always means resistance. Activity, remember this, activity always means resistance. Now somebody comes and slaps you, you should slap back. If you do not resist that evil, Swamiji has shown, even for one day, if majority of humanity practices non-resistance, the world will go to hell. The terrorist will take possession of the whole world. Bad people are always aggressive. They will take possession of the whole world. So that is the external sign that we are not doing right. Actually, it is from our own spiritual growth point of view that it is not right. So, resisting evil is the very nature of work. Resist all evils, mental and physical. Mental and physical evils. So, wrong thoughts are there in us, we must resist them. Wrong activity is there around us, we must resist it. And then, but with all proper attitude. And then we grow. As Swamiji has shown in the last para of the first chapter, our activity in the beginning will be selfish. Let us do that. and let us try to become more and more unselfish. So what you have to do is do activity according to your state of life, and side by side try to become unattached more and more. Throughout the Karma Yoga we will see through knowledge or through devotion. So in this chapter Swamiji is mainly telling how different people have to act differently, and in that the main difference was between activity and inactivity. On last day I referred to specially this Sermon on the Mount, and Swamiji has that in mind very clearly. He is telling that if you practice non-resistance, calamity will come to the world. Please remember again that context. Seeing the multitude, he went up a hill, and when he sat there, his chosen disciples came to him, and then he opened his mouth and told them that I have come to fulfill, not to destroy, in the sense that the old rules were proposed by Moses long before Jesus Christ, long before Jesus Christ. And he said that the old rules will not change. One of the example he is giving is the old rule said tooth for a tooth and a nail for a nail. But I say unto you, you means the very chosen disciples, the highest order of sannyasis, whether you call them by any name. And that is called fulfillment. That means when you are reached this state, then you should do this, that will fulfill your life. Old rules will not change, he says, till the earth passes away. And so, resist not evil is an ideal to be reached, not to be practiced by every man. That is the main point. It cannot be practiced, it should not be practiced. That will neither help our spiritual growth, nor will be conducive to the good of the world. So, inactivity, resist all evils, mental and physical, and when you have succeeded in the resisting, then will calmness come. That means through struggle you will gain the Sattvika Gun. It is very easy to say here nobody, hate nobody, resist not evil. Easy to say. What happens? We will become hypocrite. But we know what that kind of thing generally means in practice. He is showing. I give you an example last time on that Buddhist in Silo. You do not beat him. Do not hand over to police. Put him in a sack and throw in the ocean. So that type of is very easy to say. Hate nobody, resist not evil. But we know what that kind of thing generally means in practice. When the eyes of society are turned towards us, we may make a show of non-resistance. But in your hearts, it is canker all the time. We feel the utter want of the calm of non-resistance. We feel that it will be better for us to resist. In relation to Arjuna, that is what is happening. It said, I will not fight. Krishna said, you will feel so sorry about it if you do not fight. You will always feel that I should have fought. And so it is not befitting you. We feel that it would be better for us to resist. If you desire wealth, no hypocrisy Swamiji is showing. If you desire wealth and know at the same time that the whole world regards him who aims at wealth as a very wicked man, you perhaps will not dare to plunge into the struggle for wealth. These days, even the people do not think like that. If you struggle for wealth, they will think you are a good man. Yet your mind will be running day and night after money. This is hypocrisy and will serve no purpose. So much Swamiji is following Gita in the spirit. Gita calls it, if you stop your indriyas and think by mind, it will be hypocrisy. Exactly same thing. Indriyas manasai smaran. Instead of that he says control and practice work. Plunge into the world, and then after a time when you have suffered and enjoyed all that is in it. In the first chapter he has told, pain and pleasure are both teachers. So in the world you suffer and enjoyed all that is in it, will renunciation come. Then will calmness come. So fulfill your desire for power and everything else, and after you have fulfilled the desire, will come the time when you will know that they are all very little things. The evolution, the growth of the mind, growth towards spirituality will make you tell these are very little things. Swamiji has a poem, No One to Blame. And in that he says, I am ashamed of what I call my victories up till now. I am ashamed of what I call my victories up till now. But that is after he made the victories, na? He is feeling ashamed. So, this is the point. Rajogun will lead to Sattvagun, not otherwise. He said in the childhood, I had an idea, if I can make some particular sweet, I will be the happiest person. That has now changed. They are all very little things. But until you have fulfilled this desire, until you have passed through that activity, it is impossible for you to come to this state of calmness, serenity and self-surrender. Very important point, very important point. Generally, this is preached amongst, anyway, many devotees. I find this wrong idea of self-surrender, wrong idea. They must exert to improve themselves. How without existence it will come? I surrender everything to Lord. Is that language only, mind you. And that is what Swamiji says, it is very easy to say. There is an incident Sri Ramakrishna has told. A crow is sitting on the mast of a ship, and the ship has sailed and gone to the mid-ocean. And then the crow thinks, I am in danger, I may fall in the water. So it goes to the east. He goes as much as he can, no land, he comes back. He goes to the west, he goes to the north, he goes to the south. And then he understands that he is safe where he is. But to understand that he is safe there, it is necessary for him to go to 4 directions. Otherwise he would not understand that it is safe there. Before coming to that evolution, when he says, I have surrendered everything to God, it is hypocrisy. You are avoiding struggle. Sri Ramakrishna has given an example that there are 2 types of men. Some people are like monkeys' babies. They hold their mother by all their strength. And some people are like cats' kitten. They only say mew, mew. The mother comes and does everything for them. And I find many people say we are like cat's kitten. Is it easy? Impossible, I will say. Master Masha asked Sri Ramakrishna, in what condition of mind we realize God? And there Sri Ramakrishna has given this example. Have you gone to that condition? So struggle is a must. And after struggle, when you are evolved enough, then the spirit of surrender will come. Everything belongs to God. And when somebody pinches you, your spirit of surrender shows. If somebody says you are doing something wrong, do you not react? If somebody praises you, are you not deluded? Where is spirit of surrender? So spirit of surrender, I find many people talking like that, and Swamiji says it's easy to talk. These ideas of serenity and renunciation have been preached for thousands of years. Everybody has heard of them from childhood, and yet we see very few in the world who have really reached that state, very few. I do not know if I have seen 20 persons in life who are really calm and non-resisting. And I have travelled over half the world. In half the world, Swamiji says 20 people he has found who have reached that state. And we all have reached that state and surrender. We should never delude ourselves by this thought. Every man should take up his own ideal, what I can achieve, and endeavor to accomplish it. That is a surer way of progress than taking up other man's ideal which he can never hope to accomplish. Arjuna, like Sadhak, Bhagavan is condemning him for this attitude. He is telling, fight, fight. And we have all grown beyond Arjuna. For instance, we take a child and at once give him the task of walking 20 miles. Either the little one dies, or 1 in 1,000 crawls the 20 miles to reach the end exhausted and half dead. That is like what we generally try to do with the world. All the men and women in any society are not of the same mind. All the men and women in any society are not of the same mind, capacity, or of the same power to do things. So Constitution has to be studied. They must have different ideals. Swamiji in the beginning of the chapter told, we must study what is this Sattvagun, Rajagun and Tamagun, and we have to apply that in mind, in our life. They must have different ideals, and we have no right to sneer at any ideal. Let everyone do the best he can for realizing his own ideal. Nor is it right that I should be judged by your standard or you by mine. That is what happens continuously. The apple tree should not be judged by the standard of the oak, nor the oak by that of the apple. Oak is not going to give you sweet fruits. And for that will you condemn it? Will the apple will give you that teak wood by which you build houses and temples? To judge the apple tree, you must take the apple standard, and for the oak its own standard. Unity in variety is the plan of creation. This we always hear, especially in India, and we don't understand what it means. Unity means God and God alone. The reality behind all of us is one without a second, and we are all different. His creation is an infinite variety. Infinite variety is the name of creation. And yet, God is the creator, and yet, God is the reality of all of us. This is unity. Our goal becomes same, to realize God, but our paths will be different. So this is unity in variety. However, men and women may vary individually, there is unity in the background. This is the background, our real nature. The different individual characters and classes of men and women are natural variations in creation. Natural variation. The very definition of creation is variety. Hence, we ought not to judge them by the same standard or put the same ideal before them. Such a course creates only an unnatural struggle. And the result is that man begins to hate himself. Oh, I am not doing the right thing. I am not surrendering. False ideas, please. And is hindered from becoming religious and good. Our duty is to encourage everyone in his struggle to live up to his own highest ideal and strive at the same time to make the ideal as near as possible to the truth. That's all. The ideal should be, when we evolve, then we have to think of the higher ideal, and make it nearer to truth. Truth is one without a second. In the Hindu system of morality, we find that this fact has been recognized from very ancient times. That is what I was telling the other day. This classification has been understood and recognized in India. Not that India has created the caste system or this or that. What is wrong in the present caste system is the rigidity when you hold caste by birth. But when we hold caste by constitution, then it is very valid. Has been recognized from very ancient times, and in their scriptures and books on ethics, different rules are laid down for the different classes of men. Swamiji has given an example elsewhere. One rich man, say in England, found that poor people are suffering by cold. So, he made thousands of coats, woolen coats of the same size, and started distributing it to people. Now, to those for whom it fits, it is all right. Some people are smaller than the coat, you wear it, what is there? Some people are bigger than the coat, then you cut your hands and feet to fit the coat. Or don't use it. The ideal would have been if we had purchased a lot of woolen cloth and appointed a tailor and measures every man or woman and make the cloth accordingly, that would be the best ideal. So the principle is same. Unselfishness is same for all. Growing towards God is the same for all. But each will have its own method. That is important. That is called constitution. And I was telling you the other day that there is 2 points of evolution in the constitution. One is higher and lower, and one is variety. Variety, and Swamiji says unity in variety is the plan of nature. So variety is there. Some people love their mother more, some people love their father more, some people think of their duty more, some people love the society more. They are not evolved or not evolved, it is variety. Some people are more unselfish than the other, that is a level. So these 2 things are there. And this was recognized in the ancient Hindu society. The householder, the sannyasin, that is the man who has renounced the world, and the student. There was a 4th classification also, and that was forest dwellers who are not yet sannyasin. They have done with the gross objects of the world, and they retire to forest and mentally think of God. And then when they evolve further, they give up that also and become identified with God. So 4 classes, but in the West it could not have been understood, so Swamiji is talking of 3. The other 2, last 2 are similar, but different. So, brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha and sannyasi. Now this Vanaprastha and Sannyasi Swamiji is equated here, and student, Grihastha and Sannyasi. The life of every individual, according to the Hindu scriptures, has its peculiar duties apart from what belongs in common to universal humanity. As we are all human beings, there is certain common. But according to peculiar duty for every person. The Hindu begins life as a student, then he marries and becomes a householder. In old age he retires, and lastly, here 4 he has mentioned. In old age he retires, and lastly he gives up the world and becomes a sannyasi. So retires but not yet becomes sannyasi, that is one life. Those who know this, they follow ideally. I remember one gentleman in Mumbai. I will quote something of his life to you. I don't know whether it will appeal to Westerners or to all. He was a, we may say, lower middle class or whatever you call financially man. Now the daughters in India, when they marry, they go away. Now he had 2 sons. As the son married, he got a separate house for that son. Another son married, he made another separate for that son. Now the gentleman and his wife, they are getting older and older. And the sons are requesting, please come to stay with us. They are refusing. No. We don't want to interfere in your life. We want to think of God now. When you feel the dire necessity, you call. Then the mother or father will come to you, but will not live with them. So this is Vanaprastha in the modern world. Because there are no forests now. Except for the reserve forest for the animals, there is no forest now. But within the city, like I am talking of Mumbai, please, the busiest city in India. Now when the wife died earlier, then the sons pressed the gentleman, now please come to our house. He said no. He did not go to them. In our scriptures, when to retire, 2 ideas are given. Age 50 and all that is not valid so much. As soon as a grandson is born to you, you go away from the house. That is one idea. And the second idea is when you have evolved sufficiently, you go away. Anyway, to each of these stages of life, certain duties are attached. No one of these stages is intrinsically superior to another. Biological growth. The life of the married man is quite as great as that of the celibate, who has devoted himself to religious work. Where that point has gone? Okay. The life of the married man is quite as great as that of the celibate who has devoted himself to religious work. The scavenger in the street is quite as great and glorious as the king on his throne. Take him off his throne, make him do the work of the scavenger and see how he fares. Take up the scavenger and see how he will rule. It is useless to say that the man who lives out of the world is a greater man than he who lives in the world. It is much more difficult to live in the world and worship God. Living in the world may be easier, but living in the world worshipping God, than to give it up and live a free and easy life. Understand? Here it comes now. The 4 stages of life in India have in later times been reduced to 2. One thing is that Vanaprastha is gone, student is the beginning common, then after student either householder or a sannyasi. So these two stages have come. That of the householder and of the monk. The householder marries and carries on his duties as a citizen. And the duty of the other is to devote his energies wholly to religion, to preach and to worship God. I shall read to you a few passages from the Mahanirvana Tantra, which treats of this subject, and you will see that it is a very difficult task for a man to be a householder and perform all his duties perfectly. Here Swamiji has deviated from the Gita because Gita has not given these details. And he has taken up another very good scripture, Mahanirvana Tantra, which describes in greater detail about what householder should do. And as Swamiji's listeners are maximum householders, he thinks this is very important. And our class listeners are mostly householders, it is equally important to them. So Swamiji takes up Mahanirvana Tantra in his hand and reads from it. The shlokas are not given in the English translation. Swamiji's translation and comments are given. In our other language books, Hindi or Marathi, the shlokas are given, or Bengali. Anyway, but we are interested in Swamiji's translation. I am just reminding that Swamiji said, I will read to you a few passages. Now start. The householder should be devoted to God. We are householders. How can we be devotees? That is not the correct idea. The first duty of the householder is to be devoted to God. The knowledge of God should be his goal of life, you see. Knowledge of God. What he proposed in the beginning and throughout Karma Yoga. Knowledge, freedom through knowledge, that is the goal of life, not only for sannyasis, but for householders also. Yet he must work constantly, that is the difference. And though that is why it is difficult. Now I told about the modern monks also, that unless we have grown to the real sannyas, we have also to work. Yet he must work constantly, perform all his duties, he must give up the fruits of his actions to God. This is a mental input. Some people ask me how to give up the fruits to God. It is a mental input. Tell your mind continuously, I do not want the fruit. Then you will become more and more religious, or more and more you will grow in your character. It is the most difficult thing in this world, to work and not care for the result. Now, first was the translation of, you can imagine, first was the translation of a shloka from Mahanirvana Tantra, and now he is making his own comments over that. It is the most difficult thing in this world to work and not care for the result. To help a man never think that he ought to be grateful. We discussed this thing. To do some good work and at the same time never look to see whether it brings you name or fame or nothing at all. These are the different outside results, and we are not to think of them. As soon as we think of them, our spiritual growth is stunted. Even the most arrant coward becomes brave when the world praises him. A fool can do heroic deeds when the approbation of society is upon him, but for a man to constantly do good without caring for the approbation of his fellow men is indeed the highest sacrifice man can perform. This is the sacrifice. Go on doing good, never care for the result. The great duty of the householder is to earn a living. This is from Tantra. Though para is not separated, we can understand that now. Swamiji is telling a shloka. The great duty of the householder is to earn a living. But he must take care that he does not do it by telling lies or by cheating or by robbing others. And he must remember that his life is for the service of God and the poor. Earning money for God and the poor, that he must remember. And he must earn money. Knowing that, shloka after shloka, knowing that mother and father are the visual representatives of God, this idea is a particularly Indian idea, but applicable to everybody. The householder always and by all means must please them. If the mother is pleased and the father, God is pleased with the man. That child is really a good child who never speaks harsh words to his parents. Before parents, one must not utter jokes, must not show restlessness, must not show anger or temper. Before mother or father, a child must bow down low and stand up in their presence, and must not take a seat until they order him to sit. I will tell you different ideas now. In the Western country, I do not know what happens today. Even today it may be the same thing. A few years back, there is an idea called chivalry. And man giving, I was going to add undo, man giving respect to women. There was one great lady, German lady, let me take her name, Dr. Charlotte Krause. She studied Pali language. Germans were the best students of Sanskrit on those days. And if a Indian man got a D.Litt from German university in Sanskrit, he was greatest scholar. Now along with Sanskrit there are associated languages, Pali and Prakrit. She studied them. While studying them, she became attracted to Jainism. Because Jain and Buddha also, all books are in Pali or Prakrit. So through these books she became attracted to Jainism and she travelled to India. She spent maximum life in the forest of Shivpuri district of Gwalior state. There Jain sadhus are there. Later on, Madhura Scindia, not this Madhura, his grandfather, brought her to the capital Gwalior and made her in charge of a separate education department for girls. Anyway, that is a later story. Now Dr. Krause told us that when I first came to India and people were seated and I did not find a seat, I remained standing. I was, she said, shocked in my life. In Western country, as soon as a woman comes, a man will leave his place. So different ideas in different countries. She said she was shocked that in India, she was standing and so many people were sitting and nobody gave her a seat. So I am telling only this incident for different culture in different people. Here he says one must stand up in their presence and must not take a seat unless they order him to sit. If the householder has food and drink and clothes without first seeing that his mother and his father, his children, his wife and the poor are supplied, he is committing a sin. Great examples are there. Sri Ramakrishna's mother, Chandramani Devi, they were themselves poor people. But after feeding her husband and children in the house, she used to take a round of the village and see if there is anybody who is hungry and call him and give him her food, and went hungry or just ate something little. That was the ideal. And the poor are supplied. He is committing a sin. The mother and the father are the causes of this body. So a man must undergo 1,000 troubles in order to do good to them. Even so is his duty to his wife. This is addressed to men, so it is in this way. No man should scold his wife, and he must always maintain her as if he were his own mother. This is very difficult to understand for some people. And even when he is in the greatest difficulties and troubles, he must not show anger to his wife. He who thinks of another woman besides his wife, if he touches her even with his mind, that man goes to dark hell. Before woman, he must not talk improper language and never brag of his powers. He must not say, I have done this and I have done that. This is all from the scriptures going on. The householder must always please his wife with money, clothes, love, faith and words like nectar, and never do anything to disturb her. That man who has succeeded in getting the love of a chaste wife has succeeded in his religion and has all the virtues. Chaste wife. The following are duties towards children. A son should be lovingly reared up to his 4th year. He should be educated till he is 16. When he is 20 years of age, so 4 plus 16, that makes 20. When he is 20 years of age, he should be employed in some work. He should then be treated affectionately by his father as his equal. There is a shloka slightly different from this, or maybe same. Lalayet panchavarshani dashavarshani tadayet. Yes, same thing. Prapte tu shodashe varshe putram mitravad acharet. Lalayet, pamper him till he is 5. Then tadayet, punish him if he is doing anything wrong till he is 16. And when he attains 16, treat him like your friend. Exactly in the same manner, important thing, exactly in the same manner the daughter should be brought up and should be educated with the greatest care. Kanyam prapi shikshaniyat palaniyat ati yatnata. And when she marries, the father ought to give her jewels and wealth. Then the duty of the man is towards his brothers and sisters and towards the children of his brothers and sisters, if they are poor, and towards his other relatives, his friends and his servants. Not right only, duties. Then his duties are towards the people of the same village and the poor and anyone that comes to him for help. Having sufficient means, if the householder does not take care to give his relatives and to the poor, know him to be only a brute. He is not a human being. Excessive attachment to food, clothes, and the tending of the body and dressing of the hair should be avoided. I don't want to comment here. In Chandigarh, I don't know elsewhere, there was a term fast girls. So some devotee girls were telling me they are fast girls. I said, what do they do fast? They take at least 1 hour to tend to their hair and still they are called fast girls. Anyway, I don't want to comment upon that. The householder must be pure in heart and clean in body, always active and always ready for work. To his enemies, the householder must be a hero, not non-resistance. Them he must resist. That is the duty of the householder. He must not sit down in a corner and weep and talk nonsense about non-resistance. This is Swamiji's addition, definitely. First line is from the scriptures. If he does not show himself a hero to his enemies, he has not done his duty. And to his friends and relatives, he must be as gentle as a lamb. It is the duty of the householder not to pay reverence to the wicked. Another important thing. If you pay respect to the wicked, then the wickedness grows in the country. And your mind also goes down definitely. Because if he reverences the wicked people of the world, he patronizes wickedness, and it will be a great mistake if you disregard those who are worthy of respect, the other side. A man is learned, a man is a sadhu, a man is a good man, a man is a holy man, but he has no money. So the householder has to pay respect to this man, higher in spiritual values, not higher in money, not higher in more and more wickedness. He must not be gushing in his friendship, important thing. He must not go out of the way making friends everywhere. He must watch the actions of the man he wants to make friends with and their dealings with other men, reason upon them and then make friends. This is an important small point. A man should not be judged by how he behaves with you only. A man should be judged by how he behaves everywhere, and then you make a judgment and make him friends. He may be behaving good with you for some selfish ends. These three things he must not talk of. He must not talk in public of his own fame. He must not preach his own name or his own powers. He must not talk of his wealth or of anything that has been told to him privately. If anything has been told to him privately, he should not talk of it. Now it is Swamiji's comment again. A man must not say he is poor or that he is wealthy. He must not brag of his wealth. Let him keep his own counsel. This is his religious duty. This is not mere worldly wisdom. If a man does not do so, he may be held to be immoral. The householder is the basis, the prop of the whole society. He is the principal earner. The poor, the weak, the children, and the women who do not work all live upon the householder. So there must be certain duties that he has to perform. And these duties must make him feel strong to perform them and not make him think that he is doing things beneath his ideal. I want to renounce. Therefore, if he has done something weak or has made some mistake, he must not say so in public. And if he is engaged in some enterprise and knows he is sure to fail in it, he must not speak of it. Such self-exposure is not only uncalled for, but also unnerves the man and makes him unfit for the performance of his legitimate duties in life. At the same time, he must struggle hard to acquire these things. First, knowledge, and secondly, wealth. It is his duty, and if he does not do his duty, he is nobody. A householder who does not struggle to get wealth is immoral. If he is lazy and content to lead an idle life, he is immoral, because upon him depend hundreds. If he gets riches, hundreds of others will therefore be supported. Not hoarding money, earn money to spend for the poor. If there were not in this city hundreds who had striven to become rich and who had acquired wealth, where would all this civilization and these almshouses and great houses be? Great houses where unemployed poor people live. Going after wealth in such a case is not bad, because that wealth is for distribution. The householder is the center of life and society. It is a worship for him to acquire and spend wealth nobly. For the householder who struggles to become rich by good means and for good purposes, he is doing practically the same thing for the attainment of salvation as the anchorite does in his cell when he is praying. Anchorite is a Mathvasi, Kutiyavasi is called anchorite, and is praying. For in them we see only the different aspects of the same virtue of self-surrender. So earning money and giving to the poor also is self-surrender. And self-sacrifice, prompted by the feeling of devotion to God and to all that is His. His means God's. For God and for all that is His means the entire world, He is serving. So that is surrender. We stop here for the present. We shall continue in the next Thursday. ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्ण समाज्ञया यो धर्मस्थापनरतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्। ओम शांति शांति शांति। हरि ओम तत्सत्। श्री रामकृष्णार्पणमस्तु।